and welcome to another episode of the Tyrannic Show, where we teach you how to love and care for your natural hair. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about 5 ingredients to avoid if you have or experience breakage or shedding. And we're going to just dive a little bit deep into these ingredients so you can understand why to avoid them. Because you may have heard, let's avoid parabens, right? Parabens is a big one. I saw this meme that said, yeah, shampoo does not include parabens. Sounds good to me. But you don't know why you're avoiding these ingredients. So I'm going to just shed some light on why these ingredients may cause more harm than good if you are experiencing breakage, shedding, dry, brittle hair. So just the 411 on what is the real issue and why you should avoid these ingredients. So number 1, sulfates. So sulfate is a big one. If you have curly hair, if you have seen anything about curly hair, you always hear us preach, or people in the curly hair community preach not to use shampoos that contain sulfates. You want to avoid it. Why? Sulfates are a cleansing agent, right? Just like how you have your detergent, which you wash your clothes with, they have a cleansing agent in it, and your dishwashing soap also has a cleansing agent in it. Well, shampoos also are designed to clean the hair, and they have a cleansing agent. And the one that you want to avoid, because there's several different cleansing agents that are really, really good for curly hair or hair in general. But if you see the word sulfate on, the ingredient list, then you probably should avoid it. There is an ingredient called sulfosinate, which is different from sulfate. So it's not as harsh as a sulfate. So what you look for is the actual word sulfate, SULFATE. If it has that word on it, then no, we want to avoid it. But sulfosinate, so with the O in there, you can use that. That's fine. It's not harsh as a sulfate ingredient. So sulfates are harsh cleansing agents that are used in shampoos. And a sulfate, an actual name of a sulfate that I would encourage you to avoid if you're experiencing dryness, breakage, or shedding is sodium lauryl sulfate. So that's the Inca or entire scientific name of one of the harsh sulfates that you would find in your shampoo. These cleansing agents, they remove dirt and oil effectively, but also strip your hair of its natural moisture and protective oils, leaving it dry, brittle, and more prone to breakage. So if you've ever shampooed your hair and you're like, my hair feels really dry, I don't like how it feels like when I'm touching it, it feels really stiff. It almost feels like squeaky clean. That's because 2-to-1, you're using a sulfate shampoo. So back in the day, before we had all these natural hair care brands that are catering specifically to our hair type, we would use conditioners made not for our hair type. And those shampoos would contain agents for people with straighter hair textures. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that straighter hair textures, they allow the natural sebum that is produced by the scalp to get, on the hair strands. And that is why, work their way down the hair strands. And that is why you find that curly hair is drier, because with curly hair, the natural sebum that's produced by our scalp has a harder time moisturizing our hair strands because it has to go in like a circular or a zigzag motion. Whereas if you have a naturally straight hair texture, the oil that your scalp produces just falls down the hair strand. So you find that people with this hair type, they may have more buildup on their hair strands, or their hair may be shinier, always moisturized, no matter if they have a great hair care routine or not. So they would use, sorry, I keep saying conditioners. I don't know why. They would use shampoos that contain sulfates, and it'll be fine. Why? Because one of the reasons why is because their hair will always get moisture if their scalp is producing the natural sebum. It's just easier for their hair to be moisturized. But when you have curly hair and your hair isn't being moisturized, you're skipping your deep conditioning treatments, you're skipping your leave-ins, you're not taking care of your hair isn't being naturally moisturized by the oils that your scalp is producing. So if you put a sulfate shampoo on top of your hair and your hair is already lacking moisture, guess what that's going to do? It's going to dry out the hair more. So that is why if you have, naturally curly hair, or if your hair is dry, breaking, or shedding, you want to avoid sulfate shampoos because it just makes a bad situation worse. So I hope that kind of explains like why you should avoid sulfates, because we have a lot of information out there and we don't know why we're doing it, and that is why. Number 2, drying alcohols. So alcohols, is very controversial when it comes to, why am I not, did I not say, I'm not saying this word right. Very controversial when it comes to hair care, because we have alcohols that are drying to the hair and we have alcohols that are moisturizing. So let me give you an example. A drying alcohol would be isopropyl alcohol. This is what you would find in your rubbing alcohol, which will be found in your first aid kit, or like if you have cuts or bruises, that's the alcohol that you put on the wound to disinfect, clean the wound. So that is a drying alcohol if used in hair care. Now you have alcohols that are considered moisturizing alcohols, and these alcohols are usually found in conditioners. You would find them in a leave-in conditioner, a rinse out, or a deep conditioning treatment. These alcohols, cetyl and cetearyl, are alcohols which we use in our products, but they are moisturizing alcohols. So there's a difference. Not all alcohol is bad, but you need to identify which ones are bad. If you see isopropyl on a label, yeah, don't use that one. It's if you are experiencing dryness and breakage and shedding, isopropyl is just going to make a bad situation worse. These are isopropyl drying alcohols are short chain alcohols commonly used in styling products. While they help products dry quickly, so they would help if you're suffering from like, oh, my hair is taking so long to dry. It does help your hair to dry quickly, but that's not what you want if you're experiencing breakage or shedding. They draw moisture out of the hair, leaving it dehydrated and weak over time. That's why, which this is a great point. That's why we see all these new products coming out, and they're not specifically made for our textures. And you're like, okay, I'm going to use it. It looks great. There are a lot of reviews. There's a lot of marketing behind it. There's a huge marketing budget behind it. And they are pushing these products and they seem to work. But the products have ingredients like isopropyl alcohol in it that will not work great for your hair. Yes, it works great in the beginning. But then as you use the products months and months and months, then you start to experience hair loss, hair breakage, hair shedding. And you're like, why is this happening? It's because you've been using products that weren't designed for your hair, and over time, it starts to build up on your hair, dry out your hair, and cause it to break. So if you have a product that is not specifically marketed to you, or that has any of these ingredients that I am identifying, and you're experiencing shedding, breakage, dryness, dull hair, this is why. Pay attention to what the products say on, the ingredient list. Pay attention to who the product is marketed to. Pay attention to who's using the product and flourishing. It may look good like when you first use the product. Yes, it looks good, it feels good. But trust me, over time, if you're putting products in your hair that contain sulfate, isopropyl alcohol, then your hair will start to break and become dry. So prevention is key. So knowing this information is key. Moving right along. Number 3, silicones. So silicones like dimethicone, silicones create a smooth coating on your hair, giving it a temporary silky feeling. However, they can leave a buildup on the scalp and hair, blocking moisture and nutrients from penetrating, which weakens your strands. Now, the thing with silicones is silicones really get a bad rep. Silicones are not that bad. The only way silicones are bad for the hair is if you don't have a wash routine. So if you're going weeks and weeks and weeks and using a silicone product that has silicone in it and not washing your hair, then it's going to cause the breakage, dryness, right? If you are washing your hair every week and a half, or even every 2 weeks, you can use a product that has silicone in it. But if you are not washing your hair, then, don't expect to have like flourishing, healthy hair if you're just piling the silicones on. And that's for anything. If you are not washing your hair and you're using a lot of oils, a lot of butters, then of course your hair is going to be moisture starved because you aren't getting rid of all that buildup on the strands. So some of this kind of goes with like common sense. Not all ingredients, you should avoid, but if you don't have a hair care routine and your hair is breaking and shedding, then definitely avoid some of these ingredients. So it's kind of like, just think about it. Like, okay, sulfates dry the hair. All right, let me just avoid sulfates because it dries the hair. My hair is always has been dry. I'm not going to use that. Alcohols, it's like a no-brainer. The specific type of alcohol, if it has an ingredient that is in a rubbing alcohol, you don't want to use that. No, educate yourself on drying versus moisturizing alcohols. Silicones, come on. You can use silicones, but if you don't have a hair care routine, if you are not practicing hygiene with your hair, then don't use it. Number 4, mineral oil and petroleum jelly. These are heavy oil-based products that sit on top of the hair. Again, these are coating the hair and they're creating a barrier over the hair, which is stopping moisture from getting into the hair. While they can lock in existing moisture and your hair will look good when you're using petroleum jelly, let me tell you, but over time, this is why your hair isn't growing. So have you, like, when you were a kid, we used to use petroleum jelly a lot for our hair, right? But then over time, you'll see the condition of the hair would not get better. We won't retain length. We didn't know at the time because we were using grease, is what I like to call it. Because we were using grease, it was blocking moisture. And when moisture is blocked from the hair splits, it becomes dry and it breaks. And that's why we weren't retaining length. But now we are more educated on ingredients to use in our hair. We're not going to use grease anymore. Or if we use grease, we're going to make sure that we are washing the hair to get that grease out of the hair. So this is why when you were younger and you seen the meme with the little girl with the little ponytail that said, if she had this hairstyle, she could fight. This is why you continue to have that little ponytail instead of your hair growing, because that hair was piled up, was slicked down with some grease and some gel. And don't even get me started on the pink lotion. So grease, was it Ampro gel? I think it was Ampro, the black gel, and pink lotion. They were like our go-to. I really got to do a deep dive into those ingredients, and I will share them with you. So here we're learning, why mineral oil and petroleum jelly just is terrible if you have dryness or breakage happening in your hair. So they prevent the hair and scalp from absorbing essential nutrients, which can hinder hair growth and lead to dryness. And I mean, nothing really felt better than greasing your scalp, like getting your scalp greased. It felt so good. Oh, the cooling sensation and that blue grease. And there's some new thing going around now where they're mixing this blue grease with other ingredients. I don't know what to say. I'm just gonna leave y'all alone with that. You know, whatever, whatever. You know, no, I'm not even gonna go there. Y'all do whatever y'all want to do. Listen to me if you want, but just do whatever you want to do. Do not jump on these trends, ladies. Like, just don't do it. Okay. Anyway, number 5, parabens. Parabens is a big one. Methyl paraben, right, is an example of a paraben that you should avoid if you are experiencing dryness or breakage. So how do you identify parabens on your ingredient list? It will say paraben. So it'll have a few scientific words in the front, but at the end it'll say paraben. So even same with the sulfate. If you want to know how to avoid sulfates, when you look on your ingredient statement, it will say sulfate. Not to be confused with sulfonate. So when you see that O in there, that's fine. You can use that ingredient, that cleansing agent. But sulfate, it will say it on the ingredient statement. And then paraben, it will also say paraben. So you don't have to worry like, oh, I wonder if this is a paraben. It will say it's a paraben. So parabens are preservatives used to extend the shelf life of products. They can disrupt the scalp's natural balance, causing irritation and weakening hair follicles, which may contribute to shedding. So here we see what a paraben does. It's a preservative. You want to kind of stay away from parabens because they disrupt the natural balance of your scalp, and they can cause irritation and weakening of the hair follicles. So, as I would recommend, you want to opt for more natural ingredients. So you want to look at an ingredient list, and if it has like a lot of ingredients that you recognize, and that's probably going to be good for your hair. But if you have issues with, you know, dryness, breakage, length retention, then you really want to be paying attention to what products you put on your hair so that you can avoid this problem, because we know that the hair is growing. The hair is always growing, but if you are not retaining length, then it looks like your hair is not growing. So I'll go over it again. 5 ingredients to avoid if you have dry, damaged, brittle, or shedding hair. Number 1 is, you know, sulfates. In particular, sodium lauryl sulfate, because it's very drying and it will suck the moisture out of your hair when you're shampooing. So if you want to identify this on your ingredient statement, just look for the word sulfate, not to be confused with sulfonate. When you see that O in there, that's okay to use. It's not a drying cleansing agent. Number 2, drying alcohols like isopropyl alcohol, not to be confused with moisturizing alcohols like cetyl or cetyl alcohol. All alcohols are not made equal, but we have moisturizing and drying. Drying alcohols, they basically just take all the moisture out of your strands. So if you're experiencing breakage or dryness, avoid isopropyl alcohol in your products. Number 3, silicones. So there's a caveat here with silicones. You can use silicones in your hair product, but you need to have a hair routine. If you are not washing your hair every week or every other week or every 2 weeks, then avoid silicones, right? Because it's going to build up on the hair. But if you're shampooing your hair, fine, use it. I use silicones in my hair, but I also wash my hair with a shampoo. But if you're going to be like co-washing your hair and not using a cleansing agent, then silicones are not going to be something that's good for you because it's going to coat the hair. But in all honesty, no product is going to be good for your hair if you are not washing your hair, because product is going to build up on the hair, no matter if it's natural or if it's chemical based, right? So you can use silicones, but only if you have a hygiene routine when it comes to your hair. Number 4, mineral oil and petroleum jelly. So we know that mineral oil and petroleum jelly, they basically coat the strand, and it's just nearly impossible for moisture to get into the hair strand. And that is why when you use this ingredient, it causes the hair to break and shed over time. because your hair is being starved from moisture. And then number 5, parabens. The paraben, example of a paraben is methylparaben. How to identify this on your ingredient statement is it will say paraben. Same thing with sulfate, it will say sulfate. It may have a word in the front of it, but the end of the word is most likely going to be paraben. So parabens just are preservatives that extend the shelf life of, your product. But what this really does, it irritates the scalp and it causes like weakening of the hair follicle. So that's why you want to avoid these ingredients. So 5 ingredients you want to avoid if you're experiencing breakage, dryness, or shedding. Number 1 is sulfate. Number 2 is drying alcohols, not to be confused with moisturizing alcohols because those are actually good for the hair. Number 3 is silicones, but only if you don't wash your hair. If you are washing your hair, use silicones all day. Number 4, mineral oil and petroleum jelly. And number 5, parabens. I hope that this was helpful to you. Have a great day.